Hey, good afternoon. We are here live talking about the ACT and the SAT. So sorry we're a little bit behind schedule because I can't read a clock. So, all right, today what we're going to be looking at is the SAT, the ACT and the SAT. I'm going to focus more on the ACT. It has more math. And we're going to be talking about just the strategy of taking and dealing with the math section of the ACT. I mean, some of these strategies actually apply in different places, but differently. So we're not going to. I mean, and to the other sections. I mean, so what we want to do today is talk through a couple of simple strategies. We are doing some things here. Well, we have a partner that we've been working with for years that does ACT, SAT, and many other things. Prep. They're a great partner. They're on our website. We were approached by them years and years ago, and we've been working with them for a long time. And many of you have gone over there and taken their courses. Um, that's fine, but what we have learned just talking to many of you, and is a lot of the things out there are geared at students who are trying to make a 30 to a 36 on the ACT now, or the equivalent score in the SAT. They are looking at top scholarship dollars, and they will do anything under the sun to get there. That's great. And those courses, and actually most of the stuff on the market, that's what it is geared to. It is, so therefore it's more intense. Your students got to be more dedicated to do that. And it's, it's just a lot more work. So what there's less stuff on the market to do is for people who are trying to get up into the 26. I'm talking ACT only. The 26 score, the 27 score. Maybe they're down at a 20. And for example, many engineering programs out there will start at 24 or 25, somewhere like that for their acceptance. And of course they look at the math part individually. So that's kind of where a lot of people are, and we want to address that a little bit. Of course, there's also some people that have a very low ACT score, and they're just trying to get up to bare acceptance level. And there's not much on the market for them, and so a lot of times they get into these courses and they're just massively overwhelming because number one, they're built for students who are going to do anything to get the highest score possible. And it's a different game that we want to take. So what we want to talk about today is just how we think about the ACT. How do we think about the SAT? We have some products coming out that are kind of going to hit this. They would, if your student's trying to get a 36, that's fine. They help them too. It's the same strategies. It's just, that's not exactly what we're targeting. And again, this is coming from what many of you are saying. So first of all, let's talk about what we see on the ACT and the SAT. And it's a moving target. They change the standards every single year. They make big changes sometimes, but they change what they're doing pretty much every single year. The SAT has watered down the math probably more, meaning they just do less of it. So the ACT still has more math. Other than that, there's a lot of similarities in what they do and their strategies. So the ACT, for instance, is pretty much you can use a calculator on all of it, and there's little things like that. But for most students, what's happening is they are either targeted at one or the other, and so you focus on what it is. So we're going to focus on the ACT right now because that's what a lot of questions that have come up. For a while, we thought the ACT, at least at the university level, we thought the ACT was going away and the SAT was going to be the big deal. And so some universities like one or the other. And that's why we thought everybody was leaning, and it's kind of actually not. It's probably market. This is a market game. What we want to, first of all, I'm going to talk just strictly again ACT. So I keep saying that because some of you are going to ask me, but let's just kind of talk strategy about what's going to happen. And that's really what we want to deal with. There is there. If your student or you are taking these courses, you obviously need to know some of the math, right? That's a given. But what makes the student a top performer is not necessarily the one that's the best at the math. There is a lot of strategy that you should do, and just the way you think about problems. So, uh, and let's start with the first strategy: is what is on the test. So, we they tell us. So the ACT tells us exactly what's on the test. That pre-algebra and elementary algebra make up 40 to 45%, intermediate algebra another 20%. So right there, just algebra stuff alone is 60% of the test, give or take. And then we got plane and coordinate geometry. Who cares what those things are? I mean, most of those things are kind of mixed into algebra courses anyways. And so now that's 25%. So you are pushing 75% of the test, and you're not touching trigonometry. So I think the SAT is totally dumped trigonometry. But so it's like 10% of the test. So when you're seeing some of the trig stuff and you're studying it, the first thing is don't, right? If you're trying to make a 36, obviously you want to do that, but don't waste your time there. The other thing is the probability and statistics and some of that stuff, which is sometimes it's easy, but I don't even think it's 1% on average. So what you want to know here is just algebra and geometry and the basics of algebra and geometry. That's the first thing you want to know. The second thing you want to know is, how does the person write the test? And that sounds weird, but I've been in these, I haven't done it for the ACT, but where I've been writing tests for like the professional engineers exams. And we were instructed that there's a method to write the answers. So let me pull up here 1 second, if I can, and show you what I mean on a screen. Sorry, I meant to do this before. So we want to do a screen share a screen. There's so many buttons to click. All right, so I want to share the screen that's got the green box on it. So, all right, I think I'm sharing correctly. Yes, all right, so this is just a definition from Wikipedia. So let's just go to, that's not the screen I want to share. This is the one I want to show. This is a look. This is straight from the ACT website. So you will see ACT standard math 6 questions. So as we look at this, these are samples. And by the way, some years, some test cycles, sometimes you go and take it, the test is going to be harder than it is other times. I can't quantify that, but just from hearing what people have saying, and of course that's just how it works. Some days you go in and it just seems like it's crazy. The other ones, especially for those of you who take it multiple times, it's easier. So if you look at these are sample problems, first thing is you've got A through E. You've got some possible problems that are looking here. So I want to step back and say, from the test writer's point of view, what's going on here is he or she is asked to write a problem and then to give answers. And by the way, this is not trivial if you are the test writer. It was not the most fun experience I've ever had, spending a day writing test questions every time. So, but this is why. Is you want to write a problem and then you want to give answers. These answers are not random. Obviously, one of these answers is correct. And just because there's a little blue dot there doesn't mean it's the correct one, but they're not random. They're chosen intentionally. Obviously, one being correct. The other, at least one of these answers, and sometimes 2 or 3 of these answers, in this case, when you got 5 possibilities, are what we call distractors. Now, a distractor is meant to, um, if you make a common error, that it's going to look up and show up as an answer. In other words, I flip the sign and a minus sign and I get something. Let's, for instance, you come over here. As we look at this one, and let me get my screen a little bit bigger, if that's possible. All right, so if I look at this one here, number 3, notice what's the value of x, and there's a -7 and a +7, and there's a -1/5 and a 1/5. Those are distraction. The fact that you've got the positive and the negative. Now, what that tells me is it's one of those. It's not the one. Is in any time you see a positive and a negative. Now, this is not an always is statement, but it's generally a sign that this is, let's see if we see another, it's generally a sign that that is a distractor. And so one of them is correct and one of them is not. And so you can throw the others away. So, and the other thing that we oftentimes see is in almost all of these, you just see one answer that you can almost look at the answer and it's unreasonable. You don't even really know what the problem is. You're just like, that one doesn't fit. And so that's one of the strategies we look at. So a lot of times when we're taking these tests, you kind of go in reverse and say, look at the answers first and eliminate. So we can, like this one here that's got, a car's traveling, something, we see dollar signs in the hundreds, and we see 44. It's not 44. We see over here 362, 500, 800. It's not the 362. Yeah. And again, could it be? Yes, but it's highly unlikely. So, and because what we want to do as a test taker is kind of do the opposite of what the test writer did. And so we kind of want to back into the answer. So I say that to say, as a test taker, what we want to do is, first of all, know what the kind of problems I might see. What do they look like? And number 2 is, how do I go about dealing with these problems? How do I tackle them? Because with this question number 2 that you see right here in front of you, you have about 1 minute to answer it. So we see when x is 3 and y is 5, how much does the value of 3x squared minus 2y exceed the value of 2x squared minus 3y? And if you have to think about this much, you're out, right? You've already lost the problem. So the first thing I know here is it's probably not 4. And so, but this is a subtraction. And so you just you're trying to reason. It's probably not 50. The numbers don't look in that scope. So it's one of these 3 in the middle. And we're not going to work through these, what we're doing today anyway. But this is the strategy you want to think. It's just think backwards from the problem. What is he asking for? We know on a test that the number 1 problem on this test is, for the math part, is people run out of time. That's the number 1. They end up with questions they leave blank, which is a big no-no. You should always answer everything. They're not counting off if it's wrong. But they run out of time and they don't answer the questions, or they run out of time and they start guessing, which is very typical. So what we're trying to do here is just give some strategies of how you can not run out of time. You do not have time, and what you've been doing, in your high school classroom, you don't have time to sit here and say, okay, car average. I mean, you barely have time to read the crazy problems. If I'm just doing, another thing I would be doing looking at these things is, I got all these problems on front of me on paper or on a computer screen, however you might end up doing it, and just say, this problem number 7 over here, it has a whole lot of words. Forget, I'm going to scratch off this one. I'm going to pick one somewhere in the middle or something. It's just, it's going to take me too much time to divulge what it is. That's my guess right off the bat, right? And the same thing. You know, some of these look like, okay, I can read this one very quick. I can kind of get through this one really quick. This one is asking me for an angle. I think so these, the reading, unfortunately, when you have a lot of words, I like word problems, but when you have a lot of words and you have to think through what the words mean, it's going to take you a lot of time. So move on and then come back and deal with them later. We see here another sales going on, this story, and this isn't, by the way, not a hard problem. Just most of these aren't that hard problem. It's just, do you have time to think about this? And so look at this one. A typical student consumes 67 pounds of sugar. So, well, that's probably a true statement. But that's a lot of things to read, to consume. Now, so if I am going to do these problems, what I want to do is I want to kind of backwards. Here's the answers. This one's not going to be 14, but and first of all, what are they asking me? That's because that's the second problem. People run out of time. And the second one is they don't read the problem. They don't know what they're being asked. So, and this is just numbers, right? Assuming the track members consume sugar level, what is the maximum number of pounds of sugar to be consumed each year? That's what they want to know. How many pounds of sugar is the max? So kind of knowing where you're going, because it's not the other thing you do when you write a test is you might put some information in here that's not needed. Like, 67 pounds of sugar, there's 20% of something. Is that needed? I might throw the 20% in there and just talk about it. It's relevant, but it has nothing to do with solving the problem. And so those are the kind of things that get you caught up. So anyway, these are us looking at some problems. And what I'm doing right here is just kind of walk, at a very, very high level, how would you solve these problems? If I was working with a student coaching them, this would be the first thing. Let's look at this one here in 12. In a standard plane, there's 3 vertices of a rectangle. So there's dot, 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 and dot. I don't know if you can see those on your screen. There's 3 dots. Well, the other rectangle point is going to be down here, and he's asking us, which is the 4th vertex of the rectangle? So what's the other point? Okay. I know it's negative. The second value, the y value, is negative. Well, all of those are negative, so that's not helping me. And I know it's got to be lower than -5, so it can't be any of those 3. So it's got to be F or G, right? And so that's where we start. And now what we can do is we can maybe work backwards and just kind of plug in F and G into an equation or something like that and see which one fits. So we do this with all of these, the same thing, I mean, that's the strategy, because you want to be using, 30 seconds for a problem. And because if you do that, you have some time left over and you've got a little bit of leeway to be using. So, all right, let me jump off of that for a minute. And by the way, if you've got questions, I mean, we have a comment section here. If you have any questions, I see she's just doing a 20% off of, that's our Algebra 2, which trig, everything you need, and our Calculus, everything you need, which has been on sale all month. So, and by the way, you don't need a coupon code. Sometimes people ask us, do I need a coupon code to buy those? It's built into the price. I mean, built into the website or the store. All right. So now, but what I'm kind of showing you at a very high level is kind of how we think about solving these problems, how we think about going about this. If you were going into one of these big giant, if you were going to go to a coaching problem, I mean, or paid for an ACT training class or something, you would be working massive number of problems. There's nothing, I mean, that's obviously would be really helpful. If you can get your student to do it, but you'd be working massive number of problems. You would be, doing all these drills and memorizing a lot of things. All that's good, and it's going to move your score up. What we're trying to talk about is how do you get a couple of points? How do you move a couple of points? If you're at 30 and you're trying to move to 32, that's great. If you're 20 and you're trying to move to 22 or 25, that's what we're looking to do here. So, and sad to say, we know that just taking the test over and over doesn't do it. We see a lot of people who take the test and then they take the test again and then they take a test again, which is fine. ACT loves to get your money. Um, and and their scores don't go up. They don't improve, or they go up in one area and they go down in another. Some people actually go down. So just taking the test over and over isn't necessarily going to get you there. So what I like to do first is think about strategy. How do you think about doing these things? So again, the 10 types of math problems that I just covered. Well, the 10 types. What did I do with my 10 types of math problems? Um, and by the way, this will be on our, I've lost my file. It's supposed to be here in front of me. So we have coming up a downloadable guide that will show you the 10 types of math problems that you're going to show up on the ACT and SAT. It kind of breaks down what to expect. And here's some things to, here's the key questions that you need to have. What are the 10 types, and how do you be ready for them? And the first thing, again, is knowing that it's mostly algebra and geometry. And so some of the things that you might do is, there's certain types of things that are linear equations. There's certain types of things that are going to be systems of equations. And what we want the student to do is be familiar with those. Now, obviously, most of the students have been through algebra and geometry. They've seen it, but we just want to go back and say, okay, let's familiarize ourselves. These are the kind of things that are going to be on the test. Not everything you do in algebra and geometry are going to show up on the test. Distant rate problems of word problems, for instance, they love distant rate problems in terms of word problems. Again, the challenge with word problems is you have to reading them, factoring quadratics. So this is what the worksheet that we're doing will show you. This will give you some examples, give you some things to do, some things to practice to do them. But they're common. Now, and I will say they're common, but one of the things that we know about writing the test is the test writers are given some guidelines, but they might do some different things, right? The ACT is pretty structured, but they're given some guidelines. But one of the guidelines is that in the answers, there's a strategy to how they write the possible answers. So, as we look at taking the test and the tips, I think you hear this tip often, but quick elimination of answers, and time, because it's a time management issue. Practicing with real-time drills. I find hit and miss on that one, and I don't mean because that's not a good strategy, is because getting students to do it is painful. Getting them to do this over and over again is a painful thing to do for most of us parents, even if they want to. I mean, it's hard to do. So, all right. So really that's what we wanted to cover is some of the things. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, what we're considering doing. Let me just say what we are considering doing. We will have this little worksheet that we've put out to help guide people through the 10 types of ACT math problems prep guide. It will be a cheap point, $7 to $10, something like that we will do just to get. Again, it's a strategy. There's problems here, but it's to be clear of what are we thinking, what are you studying, what are you doing. Don't be wasting your time in other things. You can buy the big study guides. They do that. They are great. I mean, some of them are really exceptional, but just we're finding a lot of people, too much information is overwhelming. So the other thing that we are considering doing, and if you have feedback for us, that would be great. We're considering just going live and taking a group of people doing exactly what we did, but going into the detail of, let's show you how we work this problem. How do we think about these problems? And just doing live over Zoom calls with students where we walk them through ACT problems. We give them things to work on. We show them how do we answer a problem, how do we take apart a problem, and just over and over and looking at the different types of problems. We're looking at doing that. We were thinking if we do this, we would do it over a 4-week period and probably meet. And the other thing, you don't want to meet too long because people go brain dead, but at a maximum of like 45 minutes, maybe once or twice a week, and just walk through these with a group of students. So if that's something you or your student would be interested in, let us know. Send us a comment on Facebook, send us an email. Our email is support@askdrcallahan.com. And we are looking at doing that pretty quickly if we do that. Again, we get asked lots of questions about the ACT, SAT, and solving it. And look, it's just a barrier to cross. And obviously we're all about learning more math and doing, that's great. If you're going into engineering, you're going to something like that, you certainly need to double down and do that. But at this point, when you're taking these tests, the goal is to just get enough done to get a score. I mean, that may sound cheap, but that's what it is. We're not trying to win. You're not winning any prizes here. Yeah. So you don't need to solve the problems. As a matter of fact, the fewer problems that you actually solve, the better, because you are more likely to get a higher score. If I go in here and know how to solve every single problem and know the math, and the strategy, you will beat my score every single time, even if you know less math than I do. So that's what this, because your goal of the learning the math, this is just an indicator for the university, and there's more to it. There's a money flow thing, but we won't get into that. But it's just an indicator for the school. And sometimes it's arbitrary. This number that you get from the ACT and the SAT, they're totally arbitrary. They may or may not use them, but a lot of times they want you to take them anyway. And I've been told by colleges, you have to take it. We don't really care what you make. And some of them, that's the story anyway. So it's my point in saying all this. It's not a place to go kill yourself or go kill your student preparing for this. You're just, what's the hurdle? Tell me what the hurdle is. So if your university needs you to have a 24, then just shoot for the 24. And anything higher is great, but nobody cares. Nobody cares. Your church is not going to call out probably how great you made on the ACT, most likely. And if you did, it's a fleeting moment of fame. All right. So if you have any questions, again, shoot us in the comments. We will have we actually have the other thing done. We just don't have it up on the store yet. The $7, I think it's 7, maybe 10. But anyways, the strategies, the 10 types of problems you have, and the strategies to work through. We will probably decide by next week whether we're going to do the live coaching sessions. And if we do that, we'll probably do that pretty quickly. I know some people, the test dates, by the way, I think the test dates, let's see if I have them on my sheet here in front of me. I know there is one coming up soon, but of course, if you're in the one coming up soon, it's too late to register for it. But there's like 5 or 6 a year test dates. And they, it looks like April, the next ones to register for is April 5th, June 14th, and July the 12th. And there's some after that. But they are looking at doing some other changes to this test. If you're a high school senior or a high schooler right now, it probably doesn't affect you. But they're looking at some other things in terms of flexibility of how you take it. Anyway, all right. Well, that's probably enough ACT, more ACT than you ever want to hear. We will be back here next week. Again, if any feedback you can give us will help, because the products we make, the things that we do, we don't do them because we're just sitting here with nothing to do. We're trying to figure out what it is that you guys need, what kind of resources that you need to help you. So tell us, shoot an email, say, to my dream world, this is what we could have for our students. And so we could answer Facebook or email at support@askdrcallahan.com. And I think those are the two safest bets. All right. We will be, we're going to cap that for today. We will be back here next Thursday. We will send an email, by the way. I think we send emails every Tuesday as the game plan, and we'll let you know about the products and everything on that. We'll be back here next Thursday. Probably we'll be talking more about the ACT just because the number of questions we got, but it will be more focused. That will be in the email on Tuesday. So thank you for your time, and hope to hear from you. Have a great one.